Welcome to the Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world's largest festival of its kind. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout the years. My name is Genie Milgrom, and I am a descendant of the crypto Jews of the Iberian Peninsula. And I'm so excited to moderate this virtual conversation with director Daniel Goldberg and Dr. Schulamith Halevy, a historian and crypto Jewish activist, from the movie Secret Sabbath, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you so much for joining us. To both of you, it's wonderful. I'm so excited. I loved the movie. And, I just want to ask you some questions for the audience, and hopefully I touch on their own questions. So first, starting with you, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I was born in Mexico City and grew up there. I didn't have a Jewish education. We went to synagogue on usually only on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, on the high holidays, and yeah.
You started producing film or wanting to get involved in film at which point in your life?
I actually pursued a degree in electrical engineering. But after that, I decided to pursue my passion. I had been very passionate in photography from when I was growing up, and I decided to study film. So I went to the University of Southern California and studied a master's in filmmaking, and I've been producing films since then.
Wonderful. And Shulamith, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know that, there's a world to be told, but, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was invited sort of by accident to attend a conference on Anusim. And when I came there, it was so powerful, my connection with them, that I realized that it was my calling, and I stopped my doctorate on Gnosticism and dedicated myself to them. And when I became deeply involved, people started running after me for making movies, and there were people with too much power. And I was afraid for the Anusim, and I refused them all. And after I saw Daniel Goldberg's movie, A Kiss to This Land, I realized that he was a delicate, gentle person. And I came to him and I said, if you want to make a movie about the Anusim, I will help you. And he said, no, I don't want to make any more documentaries. I want to make a real movie. But a few months later, I got a phone call from him, and he came to me to Urbana, and I gave him such a series. He was falling asleep in front of my face, and he made the movie.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, Daniel, to make let's use the word real movie, because I think these are real movies, even though they're documentaries, about this topic would be very difficult, if not impossible, because the emotion, what emanates from people like the ones in the movie that you interviewed, like people like me, this kind of, let's just say, emotion and what emanates from us is so powerful. I doubt you'd find a good enough actor to emulate it, right? It would be very difficult to make. I'm sure it can be done, but tell me, why did you decide to go forward with that? Finally, why did you found the topic fascinating, or why did you decide finally to go with this topic?
So, as I was saying, I didn't grow up very involved with my Judaism, and I was on a journey of identity, you could say. And that's why I made the first film that Schulamith mentioned, A Kiss to This Land, which is about Jewish immigration to Mexico in the 20th century, in the early 20th century. And that's, the story of my grandparents and many other, Jews who arrived in Mexico and established the current day Jewish community. But when I started to show that film, I did get questions, and people said, what about the Jews who came to Mexico beforehand, all the way going back to the colony? And that's also when I was showing it, I met Schulamith, and she told me about it, and eventually I think it took some time to really to really digest the idea, but it did seem a very interesting subject, and it also seemed to I became very interested in the story. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very fascinating story, and I think it's an important one to be told because there are so many people out there, Christians, Jewish, Ashkenaz, even especially many times the Sephardim, that they don't believe that this really happens. They don't believe that you can go back that far. They don't believe in that, what I was talking about before, that existential spark that's in your soul. And because they don't have it, many times they find it hard to believe that other people do. Tell me, how long did it take you from, let's say, the moment that you hooked up with Shulamith, which, by the way, from God, because she's the perfect, I can't imagine anybody more perfect to hook up with for this, from the moment you hooked up with Shulamith until today at the Miami Jewish Film Festival, how long did that process take? Either of you.
I must have met Shulamith in 1996 or 1997, approximately. And, we began this film close to the year 2000, maybe a little bit before. And
Wow.
It wasn't, like a full-time, it was by periods of time that we would dedicate, to film, and I was doing other work, but it took a very long time to complete.
This is your premiere?
This is the second screening in the US. It's a Florida premiere, and it's the first time it will be shown in a Jewish film festival also.
Amazing, amazing. This is wonderful. Shulamith, can you tell me a little bit about the research in making this movie? The historical, as well as, if you could include in the answer, as well as the historical accuracy of what is being said, and I guess, the historical research being done for this.
Well, I've been researching for a long time before I spoke to Daniel, so I didn't specifically research for the movie, but I put him in touch with people that I knew were genuine. So not all the people in the movie are people that I had put him in touch with, but the people that I had put him in touch with were very genuine and very gentle and very sincere people who have gone through a very painful and long process. And for example, Everardo Trevino, who is in the movie, is from a clan of Treviños, all of whom, all the Treviños that I came in touch with who didn't know one another, all of them heard that they were Jewish as children, accidentally, so to speak. Somebody said in their presence that they were Jews, and they picked up on it. And if they picked up on it and followed it, then they developed it. And if they didn't pick up on it, they didn't pick up on it. And it's an entire clan. I didn't find an exception. So you had stories like that.
I'll go back to the research more with Daniel, but let me ask you now that we're here about the clan, because you know, I know that the audience that sees my work, this is the first time that, you know, that sees my work, they always have the question about what about the rest of the family? And so I asked you about Senor Trevino's family when they learned this clan, that they were Jewish. Did they all fall into place with this, or were some people like, I don't want to have anything to do with this?
Some didn't want to have anything to do with it. And some, after I interviewed them, became more interested.
Wow. Okay. And are there many of them?
It's a huge family, and there is a common knowledge that they are Jewish. And in fact, there is a town in Spain called Trevino, and it's considered a juderia.
Wow. Okay. And of this huge clan, are some of them, including Mr. Trevino today, practicing Jews, or just understanding their ancestral Jewishness?
He is practicing as much as he can.
Okay.
And he has he's very devoted to Israel, and he has many dreams about Israel, and he's very attached, and he sings Jewish songs and Ladino songs, and he puts them on YouTube, and he does many Jewish things. But at his age, he doesn't feel that he can return, because you know he's our age and he has a family, and it's too hard for him. But when his mother died, he wanted prayers for the dead that are Jewish. And she was given a mortaja, and I think, I'm trying to remember for sure, but sometimes the family objects, and I think that in the end his family objected to the mortaja. And
I'm not familiar with that word in Spanish.
mortaja is a white Jewish burial
the linens.
Right. I think he wanted to give her the mortaja, and the family objected, and she wanted the simple burial, and the family insisted on the fancy burial. I think that's what happened in the end. He had to give in to family demands.
Right. There is a huge duality in families that return and are so well aware of their Jewish ancestry. So Daniel, perhaps you can tell me a little bit about the research.
About the research, we are filmmakers, and of course, you know, I'm not a historian, and that's why we contacted people who were experts on the subject, and Schulamith, you know, was the first one, and we, you know, we contacted several researchers, and they put us in touch with the people that they knew. And that is how we started to do the research first into the possible characters, the people who could participate in the film and tell us their stories. So we spoke with many people, and after that, you know, we selected a few, so that's as far as it goes as the characters. Now, in terms of the history. It was a challenge to, you know, for the story to be understood in the present, we had to weave in a historical context. And of course, you know, the historical context is not very detailed, you know, but it has to be general. It has to be enough to understand, and that's what we try to do. And of course, throughout the film, you know, we learned and continued learning, and everything that we thought about, you know, changed during the process. It grew, and and as we needed to do more research, we did that. Yeah.
Amazing. I think you did an excellent job. What about when we heard the voice of Luis de Carvajal? Did all that information come from his diary?
Yes, that was part of the research. We read the editor, Barry Strick, and myself. We read the diary, and we felt it was really necessary to tell that story, and it also added a lot of depth and context to the film. So we decided to select certain pieces, that accompany the narrative and the story.
For me, it was particularly interesting, the part about Luis de Carvajal, because I am, my family, one of my branches starts with his great aunt, Beatriz de Carvajal, who married my 17th great grandfather, Gabriel Diez, in Fermoselle. And so she, because she was marrying my great uncle, she didn't go to Spain, I'm sorry, to Mexico with her sister Francisca, thereby not dying in 1596. So a huge portion of my family comes from Luis de Carvajal's great aunt. So it resonated with me a lot. And I mean, I was like watching the movie, that part when Luis de Carvajal was speaking, it chilled me to the bone, understanding that this was actually somebody that historically, if you know what I mean, historically I'm related to. So I found that your inclusion of that was just amazing. I think that was brilliant, really.
I think your research is amazing, that you were able to actually trace your family tree, to his sister. It's incredible.
His great aunt, the sister of Francisca.
His great aunt. Yeah. Oh,
But
okay.
let me ask also for either of you to answer, how did you, I thought the people that you interviewed was excellent. I was very moved by each and every one of them. Very moved. Really, how did you pick these people to interview? And is there any relationship then or now between these people that you interviewed? For either of you to answer.
I don't think there's a relationship between them, but for example, the children of Roberto Mercado Manzanares wanted to be interviewed because they felt they were Jewish and they couldn't prove it. So they wanted to be interviewed with the hope that something will turn out. And they were Seventh-day Adventists, so it was especially hard to find anything because they were marred by the Adventism. But as I was flying in a plane, I was reading the article about Roberto Mercado Manzanares, who the researcher misnamed him. And then I found out that they were his children. And then, of course, everything became clear. The poor man was misdiagnosed by the Israeli folklorists who didn't bother to ask to interview his mother. And simply called him a goy. And it was a terrible tragedy. And when I came back to Mexico, I got to interview the man. He was still alive. And it was a very moving experience. The man cried. I told him I'm sorry about all the lost years. And he cried and cried. And I told him, you're a Jew. Of course you're a Jew. Because he described himself as a Jew in the most classical Anusim way. I am a Jew and my mother's family is Jewish, and you can find the name Manzanares in this and those countries. Classical Jewish identification.
I think that the subjects that you picked to interview were really very special, and knowing your work and knowing how many people come to you, all the time. And, it's a nonstop flood of people that have been coming to you for many, many years. You really handpicked people that you could see the depth of their feeling. And I think I forgot her name, but the woman in Chicago, she had what was her name? The woman in Chicago?
Sharon?
Yes, she had incredible amount of feeling, especially having come over as a minister, to the realization, or a pastor to this realization. How did you come to her? How
She
did you
was
reach?
a student. She was my student at the Spirus Institute. And she actually tried to go to another teacher who was from Latin America, and he ignored her. And then she came to me, and I didn't ignore her. And she sacrificed so much to be a Jew. And we did a program for the Chicago Public Radio together. I read it for her, but she wrote it. She didn't want to have her voice there, but it's still online.
Do you find that do either of you find that any of these particular subjects at any level hide their Jewishness? Or do you find that they're out there with it and all the time and proud of it and going with it?
Most of them are public, but not all.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell me about the people that were interviewed?
I just wanted to say, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that in terms of the relationship between the people, even though they don't know each other personally, we did try to weave the story of three of the characters with the story of Schulamith, and how how they are in touch with Schulamith, how she supports them, and she's there for them. And that was that was a way that we tied together their stories.
I see. Now, are most of these, or these people and their families, I know you explained already about it, Senor Trevino, but are most of these families living full Jewish lives within a community?
I have a group in Monterrey that is living a Jewish life, and they have become a community. They have a place where they gather, and they wanted to have an Orthodox conversion, but they couldn't because they can't come to Israel. It's a war. And so they are having conservative conversions now, but some of them have been invited to the synagogue. Actually invited to the synagogue. The synagogue is really dwindled. And so they actually need people. And they've been invited to the synagogue that never accepted converts. And they're very, very happy to be invited. And they are celebrating the fasts, the celebrations, Hanukkah, everything, and I teach them every Sunday or every other Sunday, depending on the time. And right now, I teach them the Trei Asar, the 12 books of the prophets. And they are really wonderful, and they are consistent.
This is great. I know that community well. It's a very nice one.
You've helped them in the past.
I'm sorry?
I have not forgotten. You've helped them in the past.
I've helped them, and I also have taught them on Tuesday nights, not Sundays, but on Tuesday nights. And I did all during the pandemic. I was teaching a very large group, and then after the pandemic, everybody went back to work, and this kind of dwindled. But the others, the younger woman and Sharon and the other gentleman, are they in part of Jewish communities, or are they?
Sharon works in a Jewish place.
Okay.
And so she's living a Jewish, Reformed Jewish life. And who else were you asking about?
Well, all of the characters. There's 4, I believe, or 5.
I think that the twins, the brother is more involved Jewishly than the sister, even though the sister was given an option to join a yeshiva with her son, but she didn't take it up because she got into some fight with me over something. I don't know. She said she's a Chilanga and didn't agree with me over something, and then she didn't go to the yeshiva. And I would have supported her, of course, because I'm not a Chilanga.
Tell me, Shulamith or Daniel, how do you see the future generations of the characters, the next generation and the next generation of your movie? How do you see them and their relationship with the Jewish people?
I think it's a very good question. Of course, it depends, on a lot of factors. People continue, getting closer and closer to Judaism, and Shulamith, since we began working in the project, she told me about the possibility or the need for a process of return to Judaism as opposed to conversion. And we hope that for all those who want that could be an option. Of course, there is also the people who are, they are interested in their genealogy, in their roots. They want to know about all their heritage, either Christian, Catholic, or Jewish, in the history. But but of course, for I hope that many people are able to return, those who want to, and that they can be accepted, by the Jewish community, by their own families, and yeah.
Yeah, that
Genie,
yes.
there is a movement in Latin America of groups of Anusim just getting together without a leader, just getting together and using the internet and living as Jews as best they can. They go to Eshat Torah, they're getting to anything they can and just living as Jews. The wave is so strong. It's unbelievable. And
It is, yeah. And
Oh.
I've been there. I travel every couple of months into El Salvador, Nicaragua, parts of Nicaragua, it's dangerous, Honduras, Costa Rica, and I meet with these groups. And recently, the last few months, I put together the Latin American Jewish Alliance, getting the leaders, not presidents, because as you say, these are just groups, and trying to get them to come together and to understand each other and to help each other with their Jewish needs. So there's so many, like you say, there's an incredible amount. I mean,
going any place. It's not disappearing. It's
No.
growing.
They're growing. They're growing and they come together. And I work with Kulanu, as you know, to obtain things for them, whether it's the prayer books or whatever they might need. During COVID, we were sending all sorts of food to these communities because they lost their jobs. And so it's such a balloon of people that this is the importance of your film to bring this to awareness, really. So with that, my next question, who's your target audience for this film?
So I
Daniel.
think, there's a target audience on different levels. One target audience, of course, are the people who identify themselves as descendants of the Anusim. Of course, that is a where it is much more personal. It's their story, and of course, the Jewish community, as you have mentioned, many people don't believe, that this is true, don't believe the sincerity of these people or the validity of their stories. And so there's a lot of work to educate the Jewish community so that these people can be understood and welcomed. And then there is also a story that also needs to be understood by the families, by the part of the family that may say, okay, maybe I have some Jewish ancestors, but I am a Catholic or I'm a Protestant and I'm happy where I am. But it's important to acknowledge, that it's part of my story, and that actually extends all the way to Latin America, to the whole Iberian, Spanish, Latin America, culture, because wherever there are people who originated, centuries ago from Portugal or Spain, there are now in the present, there's people who identify as descendants of Jews. And it's important that even if it's a minority story, that it becomes part, that's something that Everardo Trevino says in the film, that it's important that Mexico acknowledges, that there was also a small part of history of Mexico that is Jewish history, not only Catholic. And so, yeah.
I think that the Jewish history of Mexico is huge. I mean, I don't just think it's a tiny part. I think that the basis of Mexico and most of I was born in Cuba, most of the Caribbean islands, I've certainly talked to enough researchers, whether it's Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, all of this is just, it was the breeding ground for these phenomenons. And I think that films like yours allow us to educate people. And I think that this realization, even the allowing the return that we've discussed earlier, is all a matter of education. I think that the education has to be nonstop. Sometimes it's exhausting. And that's from my own personal trying to educate people. It's exhausting. But I think that it's a job that, hopefully your film will be seen in many, many different places, and you will be able to continue to send this message and bring the awareness. I thought that Senor Trevino was incredibly, he was very strong with this message in an unspoken way. You don't have to go out there and give the message, but the way that he gave us his message was extremely strong. And I think it was words from the heart that reached the heart. And I think that, y'all are on the right path with this.
He was, and gently he said things clearly.
Yes, yes. And the voice, it came out as a collective voice. This is why I asked you, was there a relationship? Because I felt a collective voice. Daniel, you did a great job in, wrapping it all up and uniting these people in that one collective voice. And I was really impressed by that. There's just a handful of films like this. And my story is also going to be featured in this film festival. My film is about my own return, and I personally returned 35 years ago, and I am a practicing Orthodox Jew. And my story, the name of my film is Between the Stone and the Flower. And I think and I hope that in the future we can together perhaps talk to audiences about the diversity of this. My own family is from Spain and Portugal and ended up Catholic in Cuba, and you're focusing on a specific area, and that's really not my area. And it would be good that we collectively continue to tell our stories in one way or another, so people will see what a large voice that we have together. And I look forward to working with both of you in the future with that voice, especially Schulamith, who I've known, I don't know how many years, Schulamith, we've known each other for many, many years. And it's always a pleasure. Before we finish, is there anything else that you would like the audience to know?
There's still anusim coming all the time from many countries, including Holland, including Europe, including
London.
Yeah, and I help them, and I do my best.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Your work is astounding. And Daniel, is there anything that you would like to leave us with?
Well, I want to thank you very much and thank Doug and all the staff of the Miami Jewish Film Festival. It's an honor to be part of it. And we also hope to, to collaborate with you, in the future and to see your film. And yes, we hope that your film, all the films on the subject will help people learn more about this very important part of Jewish history that is not, it's not enough, it's not known well enough, and that people can be accepted and find, a welcoming way to move forward with their stories, with their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that if there are, I'm sure there will be people that will want to contact you for more information, and Schulamith highlighting your help to so many people. And I'm sure that the Greater Miami Jewish Film Festival will be able to do that. So with that, I thank you to Daniel and Schulamith from the movie Secret Sabbath for joining us. Once again, thank you to all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers for participating in the Greater Miami Jewish Film Festival. Thank you.